My name is Richard Campanella. I'm a professor of geography in the Tulane School of Architecture, and I study the physical, urban, and human geography of the New Orleans region for about 22 years now. For most of New Orleans' history, humans travel long distances through waterborne transportation, so the strategic nature of riverine and seaports put you on the map for global trade, and you were either on that map or you were not on that map. And New Orleans is practically the premier export city in the United States by the 1850s. One of the things that makes my heart skip a beat in this city is biking down, say, Royal Street early in the morning. Galleries and balconies are crowding the narrow streets. There's this 19th and 18th century architecture. And then you see these flags from all different nations, many of which have flown over Louisiana and New Orleans, coming out over the street. And I think about that every time. The Fleurs de Lis speak to the time when this city was founded, during the time of the French Bourbon monarchy. It was transferred to Spain, and to this day, throughout much of what we call the French Quarter, you see a lot of Spanish architecture. And those living legacies of internationalism abound throughout the city, and I think of that whenever I see these flags flying. When you read the travelogues of visitors here in antebellum times, they speak of the incredible diversity and cosmopolitan nature of the local population. They had never seen such a multiplicity of languages and costumes of people from all over the world. One writer called it a world in miniature. What you're looking at here is the 1850 census representing the diversity of populations in major American cities. And the size of the pie chart here represents the total number of ethnic and racial and subgroups within each of these cities, exceeding 5% of the total population. New Orleans measures as the most diverse city in the nation. This city had the most substantial free people of color population, which is one of the distinguishing aspects of antebellum society. After the Civil War, what we start to see is the formation of real ethnic enclaves. They were coming much like to the Northeast from places like Ireland and Germany, but some of the distinguishing aspects here was that they were also coming from the Caribbean, from Mexico, from Cuba, from France and Spain and Italy. At a time, you really didn't see those groups going to the Northeast. So what's bringing them here? It's an intersection of economic geography and the opportunities of the river. Cotton is coming down in large quantities. Sugarcane is being processed here. Coffee, citrus is coming up the river. So in the exchange of transshipment activity in the city, there's all sorts of opportunities for value-added industry, of handling. And so this city gave opportunity to entrepreneurial and industrious immigrants. The city enters the Union as roughly the 10th largest in the nation, and it starts to make good on all those predictions. It becomes the 7th largest, the 5th largest, the 3rd largest in 1840, and by far the largest city in the South. And intrinsic to this incredible growth is international trade. Exports going to England and France, imports coming in from Italy and Mexico. But it's also around this time that competing transportation systems are put in place that draw some of this domestic activity away from New Orleans. The Erie Canal and other canals, railroads start routing them directly to New York. And in retrospect, this was the time that New Orleans should have worked to diversify its economy, to industrialize, and to spread out its economy. So over the next century, into the mid-1900s, the city more or less stabilizes about the 12th to 15th largest in the nation. But then that decline accelerates starting in the 1960s, when that international trade and the mantle of the gateway to the Americas starts to move off to cities like Atlanta and Miami and Houston. Now, in the early 21st century, we start to see the reversal of both of those trends, and we're starting to see the beginning of a return to New Orleans on the national and the global stage. We're seeing this manifested in a more diverse population. We're seeing it with more calls at the Port of New Orleans. And when you combine it with the Port of South Louisiana and St. Bernard and Plaquemines, it's by far the busiest in the world. We're seeing it with more flights to international destinations. There's increases in direct foreign investment to the region, and we're seeing it in a more diverse local economy. As someone who studied New Orleans' first 300 years, I could attest that as we venture into the 4th century, New Orleans is returning to the global stage, and the world has taken notice.